Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Embracing New Life. And on this episode, we are going to dive into a new series of interviews with one of our colleagues, Sarah Bogdanovich. And this is going to be a two-part series, with the first part being released today and then the second part next Monday. And then that Friday after that second part is released, we'll have our full episode Friday. So we thank you for joining us. We hope you're enjoying these series, and there'll be a lot more to come in the future as we introduce you to the staff at New Life Resources. But without any further ado, here is the first part of our interview with Sarah Bogdanovich. Welcome back to Embracing New Life, and once again today we have in this episode one of our colleagues that works here at New Life Resources. Her name is Sarah Bogdanovich. She'll share a little bit more about herself, but we are glad that you could join us today on this podcast and share with us some of your background and anything else that you want to share with us.
Hey, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Great, good to have you, Sarah. Maybe you could start, just introduce yourself, just a little bit about who you are, where you're coming from.
Yes, so I graduated with my master's in mental health counseling from Trinity International University in Deerfield, Illinois, which I believe we are both alma maters of, or that's both of our alma mater. And so that was back in 2021, so I've been working here with New Life ever since. I started out doing my internship and practicum at James Place, where you were both my supervisors way back then.
Back in the day.
Yep.
2020, so I think we started right in the midst of COVID.
Yes, that was a challenging
It was
time.
very much so. Yeah, so I am married. I live in West Dallas. I've been married since 2022. Just a little bit about my hobbies. I like to read, just spend time with people, doing anything, going outside, hiking. My husband and I are both really much so into camping, so that has been a fun thing we like to do in the summer. And then with counseling, I really focus with therapy, with just doing a collaborative process and focusing on the therapeutic relationship. I believe we are wounded in relationships, and it's in relationships that we find healing and growth and change, and so that's a huge part of how I do therapy.
So what do you mean by collaborative?
Collaborative, yes. Working together, with the counselor, with the client, coming together, working on putting together goals and really making it a process that the client can benefit from. So usually when I first start out, I do a typical intake session, and I really like to get the full history of the client, what they've been through in their past, and also currently what they're going through. So that usually takes a session or two, and then after that, I like to do what's called the magic question, which you're both familiar with, and asking, if you were to get a magic pill before you go to sleep, and you take that, and during the night, a miracle happens, and you wake up the next morning, and everything is perfect, just the way you would hope for it, wish for it, dream for it to be. What would you see or feel? What would I see? And so that allows the client to start to dream a little bit about what they're hoping for, and so then I try to take what they say in that question, and then what they've shared in the first session, and then putting together, okay, where do I see some of their goals that they might say either explicitly or maybe a little bit more implicitly, and then I try to word that in a way that is clinically relevant but also personally relevant to the client, and then putting that together, and then I share my feedback back with them about what the goals that I have, and then a lot of times they're like, yeah, that's spot on, that's great, and I also ask if there's anything they'd want to add or change or take away, and then I also try to share with them as well that because this is a collaborative process, if there's ever a time or something that they either feel uncomfortable with or not willing to go towards, or just aren't generally liking, to talk to me, to bring that up. I won't be offended at all, and because that's it's a relationship. I want this to be a healthy relationship, that they can benefit, and also that they feel comfortable to assert themselves.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for each individual client, they have a lot of autonomy in how their treatment plan's going to look and the goals that they have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I know that's one of the myths that we covered back in a previous episode, where people just feel like it's going to be a one size fits all, and I'm going to be kind of stuck in this whatever. However you do therapy, that's what's going to happen. And it's really more so tailored to their unique needs and what's going on in their life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good.
And then do you monitor that plan? Does it change while you're working with them sometimes?
Yeah, so I think when we talk, like each week, I kind of bring it up, like what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, what are some things that they are wanting to talk about or process through in a given session. And then always in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, where does this relate to the treatment goals? And that's where sometimes some of the treatment goals, they're specific but also a little bit broad, where they can encapsulate different life issues that just pop up unexpectedly, but going back to, okay, what is their deeper goal? What are they wanting? And so subconsciously, I'm doing that a lot. Or not subconsciously, consciously, but, more quietly, I would rather say. And then if we're ever stuck, sometimes we might revisit, okay, well, let's go back to your goals. And then I've had clients, especially clients that I've seen several years, we like to, try to go back and go back to those goals and see, how have they grown in a lot of these ways? And then are there any of these goals that they are wanting to focus in more or change in any ways? So.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Now, some writers are describing this as the anxious generation, or just recognizing that anxiety is reported at very high levels. Is that what you see in your work?
Yes, there's a lot of anxiety. And that was something that I didn't really expect coming into this field to really not encounter, but really gravitate towards in the work that I do, especially when it comes to how we experience anxiety in the body. Because I think when people just think about anxiety as anxious thoughts, that can either bring up a lot of shame of, I'm just experiencing anxiety, or I'm feeling anxiety. That means that, in terms of like Christian words too, be anxious for nothing.
Yeah.
If I'm feeling anxious, am I not being a good Christian? And really trying to differentiate as well anxiety as cognition, thoughts, the anxious spiral, what ifs, cognitive distortions, all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking, which we can manage more, and then also anxiety just as a physical bodily feeling. And, when we think about even fights between two people, there reaches a level of escalation that nothing is productive. And I think that's the same way in terms of our own bodies, that if we are beyond a level of escalation in our bodies, nothing is productive. So I know with a lot of my clients, when they're so physically escalated and they're like, I'm trying to combat a lot of these lies that come in and these anxieties and anxious thoughts, but yet I'm not able to, I don't seem to get much traction, but then way later on I can recognize, of course, that was a distortion, or, that was silly. And I say, well, yeah, of course, if you're so escalated, reason's not going to exist, logic's not going to exist, it's all going to fly on by. And so being able to physically calm down and focus on grounding skills and where we are in our body and connecting with that. And then knowing that just because we physically feel anxious, that doesn't mean we are thinking a lot of anxious thoughts either. Sometimes we just physically feel anxious for no reason at all. And when we try to subscribe meaning to it, I think that can tend to further and increase anxiety as well. So that's something that I have seen a lot with the people that I see, the clients that I see, especially in teens.
So what would some examples be of physical anxiety?
So increased heart rate, thinking that something small just feels so strong, feeling paralyzed, feeling like so anxious that they can't do anything, or a lot of just ruminating, and focusing so much on it can either be focusing so much on what's going on in their mind, or just, oh my goodness, I'm feeling like this shakiness. I've had clients as well that have incredible somatic symptoms where they've been to the hospital multiple times, or anxiety-induced vomiting. And then the more that we focus on, okay, when you're feeling that way, focus on these grounding skills and
what is a grounding skill?
right. It's getting outside of our own mind, I would say, in being grounded with the present. And so focusing on our reality, what is here, what's currently present. So that could be like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise, 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you smell, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. And so that can, when someone is either so consumed by their thoughts, or like experiencing a panic attack. I've found that that exercise can help get either out of their mind, or recognize that, oh, it's not that scary right here in this moment. I'm not experiencing physical danger in this moment. Another one is a body scan. So starting from the ground up and just noticing different body sensations or tension that you're feeling in your body, and then slowly working your way on up. And I like to do all of my grounding skills with my clients in session, so we might spend a session doing all of these, because sometimes they reported, I know a past therapist has just told me to do all this, and I haven't, it hasn't worked for me. And then I've asked them, well, have they practiced that with you? A lot of times, no, they haven't. And so I like to practice those things with my clients. And when I do the body scan, they're like, wow, I feel so relaxed. I just
You're raising a really important issue here, is that these skills do take practice.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And the more we practice, the more effective they become for us.
100%. If you just do it once, I have, especially a lot of my teens are like, well, it didn't work. And it's like, but continued, repeated practice is where you're going to find.
Yeah, I like to remind people that it's like let's say you picked up basketball for the first time and you decide to go shoot the ball once or twice or 10 times, and then you wait until you get to the game. And how well do you think you're going to do if you've only shot the ball 10 times and now you're playing in the game? Not going to be very good, because it takes a lot of muscle memory to be able, in a high stress environment, to be able to respond how you properly, with proper fundamentals, as they would say, need to respond. And the same is true when your anxiety, when it's elevated and you're at a point where you just need to calm yourself and ground yourself. That's not the time you're trying to figure out how to do this skill, because it's not going to work.
Absolutely not.
So we can practice in the non-crisis times.
Exactly.
And it's more available then when the need arises.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I think also, too, the body scan, it can also help, individuals recognize when they start to feel anxiety when it's small, because a lot of times they're not recognizing it when it's small, and then all of a sudden they're feeling incredibly anxious, a panic attack, and not able to do anything. And so sometimes a scan like that is, when you catch it when it's small, well, then it's a lot more manageable to deal with.
It sure is.
How would you explain to somebody, because anxiety is a normal phenomenon that happens in life.
Absolutely.
Everybody experiences anxiety. For somebody who's like, well, do I experience normal anxiety, or is my anxiety at a level that I need to get help for it? How would they know when they've crossed over the threshold of I might need to seek some help for this?
Well, I think it's beneficial to know that anxiety is not always a bad thing. I remember we've talked in the past that, anxiety can be beneficial. If you
For sure.
realize that you have something due tomorrow, like a paper or an exam or presentation, and you haven't worked on it. Or a podcast. And you're prep for it. It's good to feel a little anxious to kick it into gear. Honestly, I got through most of my college and master's by banking on that anxiety in the last couple days before something is due. So I think when it gets to the point of paralysis and not like physically, you absolutely can't, but you feel like, okay, I'm finding myself procrastinating to an unhealthy level. I feel like I'm not able to...
disruptive.
Yeah, absolutely. When it's disruptive, when it's impacting your relationships, when you find yourself reacting more in bigger ways versus just responding, a lot of that can be anxiety related. So I would say those are a couple of key.
Well, also, like if somebody standing back from a scenario and looking at it would say like, oh, I would have liked to have done that, or would have normally been active in that, but found myself avoiding or not engaging.
Yeah,
that'd be another good sign.
Absolutely. And I think also a lot of times it becomes so normal for someone to experience anxiety, so it becomes their new normal. So it sometimes people are very high functioning anxiety, and so they don't always recognize that, oh, this isn't normal because it gives me a lot of good results and I'm able to be highly successful, highly accomplished, and then unfortunately sometimes you don't realize it until it's too late and your body's physically breaking down.
Or your relationships are broken down.
Absolutely.
But that idea that in moderate levels, anxiety can sometimes be helpful.
Yeah.
In low levels, yes, it often is helpful. But somewhere on that continuum, it starts to interfere.
Yeah.
And now it's disrupting, and then you go all the ways you're describing, even paralysis. Anxiety can interfere with sleep.
Yeah.
It can interfere with eating.
Yeah.
When someone shares with you that they're struggling with anxiety, what type of things do you tend to take a look at to try to understand their experience?
I like to understand is this more situational? Is this more of a long-standing thing that they have been struggling? So I like to go into how long do you feel like you've been struggling with anxiety? What are some factors that tend to make your anxiety worse? What are some instances, maybe if there's a clear period of time where you're like, yes, this is when I started to really notice anxiety in my life. Sometimes it could be from like a past trauma or family systems, especially with teens. Unfortunately, I have seen where a lot of teens are experiencing anxiety and they tend to internalize that I'm the problem or I'm the issue when we go and we look at, well, it's a very actually normal response to some very abnormal situations given family. If it's more systemic, if there's chaos in the home. So I really try to take a look at all those factors, also ask them what are some things that you've done that have gone well when trying to deal with anxiety, things that have helped. And then also if it tends to be just a continual thing where it's, the content can change, but the process is still the same. Well, the more you try to deal with the content of it, it's not going to help. And so going into, the process of how we deal with anxiety. And so
we hope you enjoyed that episode, part one of a two-part series of our interview with Sarah Bogdanovich. Be sure to like and subscribe so you know when the next episode is released if you haven't done so already. But stay tuned because we'll have a lot more of these kind of episodes in the weeks to follow with all of the staff of New Life Resources. Have a great week. See you next time. Embracing New Life is a production of New Life Resources, a Christian counseling clinic in Southeast Wisconsin, whose aim and goal since 1976 has been to provide high-quality professional counseling psychological and consulting services from within a Christian framework.